home of George Fox University, which is a friend's Quaker University. But we just moved here, so I can't tell you anything about the town. It's COVID, and I'm not really meeting people. And
Welcome, Andrea.
Hi, Tim. How are
Good to see
you?
you again.
Good to see
Hi,
you.
Andrea.
Hi.
How's the family?
We're doing very well. Thank you. How's yours?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's 70 degrees down in Georgia.
Oh man.
It was 7 here this morning.
So
Why you gotta say that and make us all jealous, Tim?
yeah, no winter snowstorm down here.
wow.
Hannah, Andrea, is Paul in high school yet?
This year he's in 8th grade.
8th grade. I figured he's almost that old.
Yep, almost.
He's probably had his growth spurt or what?
Not quite yet. His
Okay.
feet are bigger than mine, but everything else is still way smaller than me. So
Okay, it'll
still
come.
waiting on that.
And how's Tressa doing?
She's good. She's 10 years old, and we actually have everybody at home right now during COVID. So we're homeschooling everybody, and everybody's doing really well. It's been a really sweet, wonderful experience.
Mm.
Yeah, we're still lucky enough to be doing that with our family too.
Mhm.
I'm actually down at Koinonia right now with our family, and the
That's
community
great.
here has supported us tremendously in that, you know, each of us working half days. That's great. That's been awesome.
That's great.
Hi, Roberto.
Hola amigos, ¿cómo están? Hi,
Good to see you again.
good to see you, Tim. Good to see you, David, Isaac. Hey,
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Hannah.
hi Hannah. Hi Andrea. Hello, Mark.
Hello there.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello, Ross.
Hi, Ross. You're muted, Ross.
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey there. What's for lunch?
Pizza.
Oh, okay.
We just painted this new room. Well, it's an existing room, but it's got a new paint job. Okay.
I love the
It
color.
looks beautiful.
Hi,
So my
Sarah.
wife painted it.
Hi, he did not paint it. Josiah and I painted it.
Did you have your campfires outside every week like you were talking, Andrew, or how did that work?
Yep. Church is still outside, except we just had some positive COVID cases in the community. So now they are on pause for 2 weeks. But yeah, otherwise it's bonfire and having church and praise around the campfire.
That's chilly.
It's chilly, but it works. It's something that we'll be able to talk about for decades to come. Remember when church was sitting in the snow? Yep.
In Minnesota, no less. I mean, here sitting in the snow isn't quite as bad, but
Hi, Andrew. Does that include your Monday potluck?
No, our potluck is closed at the moment just because I don't know. There's a pandemic, so no potluck.
Should we declare a quorum and get started? Tim, what do
I
you
think
think?
it's worth it.
All right.
Yeah,
got
let's
10
start,
out of
Isaac.
15-ish. All right, sounds good. Welcome, everyone. I'm Isaac Sanborn from Church of All Nations in Minnesota. And I'm co-hosting with Tim. Tim actually asked me to, facilitate this conversation. I sent a update about our church businesses in a NCN steering committee email a couple weeks ago, and it was mostly about the businesses. We have 4 or 5, depending on how you count the different businesses at CAN. CAN is Church of All Nations. And I've been involved in all 4 of them to some degree. One of them I operate as the sole proprietor. One of them I worked at for about 4, maybe 5 years before stepping down just this past year. And then the others started in the past year, and I've helped them, get their website going. The most recent one is called Femrital, which is a used clothing business, and that one I haven't helped them with yet, but I've offered to model some of their clothes eventually at some point in the near future. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, and I sent out the description of those businesses in the email. I hope most of you got that. I might also post it in the chat in a bit here. So yeah, I will, once we do introductions, I'll share a bit more about those businesses. But yeah, why don't we do introductions, say, your name, what community you're from, and why you're interested in this conversation. What brought you here today? Let's start with Tim, the co-host.
Okay, thanks, Isaac. Thanks again for your willingness to steer this. And it's the first roundtable of the year, following the Nurturing Communities Zoom gatherings of last fall. And we wanted to find a more intimate setting for tackling specific issues. So my eagerness to discuss small businesses was based around my existing knowledge of our community businesses, Bruderhof communities, where it's a very specific model of business, a much larger labor pool, with 50, 60 years of history. And then coming down to Koinonia, where my family spent the last 6 months down here at Koinonia Farm in Georgia, and seeing a completely different business also, with a very rich history, but a very different business plan, different set of challenges. And so I just was eager that, folks with a variety of backgrounds could get together and share experiences and share inspiration and encourage each other. Especially knowing, groups like the Headies just starting out with the business, and having spent time on the phone with David, hearing some of their challenges, but also, how it's, accelerated their growth as a community, or accelerated at least conversations as a community, and how we can encourage each other through those conversations. So I'll pass it on to David Burleson.
Okay, I'm David Burleson from New Meadow Run Bruderhof. And my interest was just to hear how other communities are managing. Like Tim said, we have a business that started in 1947, and it's been very successful, but I also know that having communal work is very important in a community, that it brings people together, and it also is a place where community is lived out. As the Bruderhof grows, we're experimenting with starting smaller businesses. A classic example is Danthonia in Australia, starting a sign carving business, which everybody said wouldn't be very sustainable, but they have found a way to make it and become quite good at it. And I think the important thing is the working together and the pooling of resources. And in my thought, one advantage we have in community is that we don't have to compete against each other for our jobs. And that fosters a great deal of creativity, or it can foster a great deal of creativity, because we can throw the best of our abilities. And the other point is that in many businesses, they have what's called the Peter principle, where you work and you get promoted until you achieve a level of inefficiency, and then you stay there. And so everybody gets promoted to their point of inefficiency, and nobody wants to demote them. But in community, we don't have to worry about that, and you can have an important position one year, and another year you can just be sweeping the floor and cleaning the toilets, and it doesn't matter, because we're not in competition with one another. And so that's a huge blessing in community, that we don't have to compete. So those are just my thoughts right now, and I'll pass it on to Hannah.
Thank you. I'm Hannah, and my husband's David Hetty, and we are in a new community in Newburgh, Oregon. We don't have a name yet. If we did, I would tell you. So we just broke off of Springwater Community in Portland. Prior to that, I've been at Hope Fellowship in Waco, Texas. And I just appreciate Nurturing Communities for all of their work. And when I saw this class, this roundtable, I was just really excited, because this is what I've been meaning to ask Nurturing Communities to put on. So it was just given to me. Thank you all. So we just started our community. Let's say we've been forming this community for about a year, or maybe 3 years. So the community is new. Not even everyone has moved to Newburgh yet. And then all of a sudden we bought a business together. And that felt like God's leading, but it has turned out to be really stressful. So I still sense God's leading. We're just a little overwhelmed right now. The business, it has 2 spray equipment products. One is agricultural and the other is dog grooming. So we're learning all about nozzles and tanks and pumps, and that's fun. Mostly I'm here because I feel like the business has necessitated all of our attention, and that doesn't give us enough community time, and we don't know yet how to merge those 2 worlds. And I know that the work is part of community life, but right now it feels like a business that's stressful, that's robbing our attention. Also, we all know that we want to transition to a more community focus in coming months. So you guys can give me inspiration towards that. And we probably know that we need a business mentor, or somebody who's already lived in community and had businesses before. That's it. Yeah. If you have questions later, ask me.
Well, I can go next. I'll just be brief here. The reason why I'm Andrew from Genesis Community here in Minneapolis. And the reason why I joined here is we're considering buying a house and running it as a sort of community business, yeah, as an Airbnb. So simple, pretty, not super original there, but yeah, that's why I'm here.
My name is Gus Ratty. I'm at River Place Fellowship, And I run my own business as a piano technician. And I just want to see what other people are doing. Just for the, just because what I do is not very communally oriented. I basically have a set of skills which I applied to building up a customer base. But I'm here just to find out what other people are doing to, start a business and make it viable within community. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Gus. How about Andrea?
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm from the Bloomington, Indiana Catholic Worker. And I'm interested today, we are a very small community. There are 5 adults that help to run the community. We also have 6 children total in the community. And we host, currently we have 5 people who would otherwise be homeless living with us. And about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, we started thinking about once all the kids were past baby stage and we started to have more energy, we just started thinking about the possibility of having some sort of meaningful work for our guests, and not really knowing how to do that. People participate in chores and things like that, but wanting to have some regular work. So for us, I'm not looking for a business model that will make us money necessarily, but that would focus on the community aspect of working together, having something meaningful to do that greases the wheels of relationships and skill building. So that would be more my focus. And I'm just interested in anything I learned today. Very excited.
Oh, I was muted. Nathan, can you go next? Looks like your video's on.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Nathan Ralston. I'm here in Saltillo, Mexico. And we're more of I guess, like a traditional congregation kind of in transition towards an intentional community. And believe that this is also part of sharing life together, as David was sharing. This is a way in which a community can be lived out, and so really here to learn and just kind of breathe in all from the wisdom and knowledge of you all, and hopefully be encouraged to I guess appreciate the assets that God has provided within our community, so that we may steward that together. In our place. So thank you.
So I'll just jump in here and just say briefly that my wife and I spent 3 months with Church of All Nations, and really appreciated the time, but also watched them build their businesses, starting with K-Mama, the company that makes Korean hot sauce, and know that what they greatly appreciated out of learning to work together was the fact that each person could find meaningful work and also bring their gifts to the business. And while starting a business is often a big risk and a lot of hard work, having each other to support and bounce ideas off and see it through the birth pangs together is a huge asset. And it's a thrill to see these different businesses from afar. I'm in Spring Valley here, just across the road from David here in southwestern Pennsylvania. But to watch these little businesses that Isaac mentioned is just thrilling. And yeah, wish you all the best. That's about it, I guess.
Hey,
Roberto.
hello. My name is Roberto, and I am also here in Saltillo, Mexico, in the north part of Mexico. And so, as Nathan was saying, we belong to this small church here in Saltillo. We have been developing small things during the last years, trying to work through, I don't know, some kind of a business, but not exactly like that. Just recently, we were making like 100 piñatas for Christmas in the church, and we saw all these piñatas, and we had some money back from that, but nothing so established like a business. It was more like a project. We also have like 29 chickens in the garden of the church, and we are collecting eggs and try to give away to the neighbors and to the people from the church, or selling, even selling some of the eggs from the garden in the church. So we are willing to learn because it's something that seems very, very interesting. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wow, so much experience here at the Roundtable. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I'll just I will share very briefly, because it sounds like we all have a lot of questions or ideas that I think it would be really fruitful to talk with each other about. So I want to save plenty of time for that. But yeah, the first community business that we started at Church of All Nations, Mark already mentioned, that was K Mama Sauce. It's a Korean hot sauce company. We started that about 6 years ago. And the reason we started it was actually there was an intern here who's now the CEO of this company, but he was an intern at the church at the time, and really didn't seem like he was, going to enjoy being a preacher, which he had already graduated from seminary, and that's the trajectory he was on. And then he worked in government, local government, municipal government for a while, and recycling, and did pretty well, but just really wasn't his passion. And then my pastor, the leader of our community, basically gave him an idea that my pastors had for years, which is nobody sells Korean hot sauce. Nobody sells gochujang sauce. You can get it at restaurants, but there's no way to get it in grocery stores easily. So why don't you just, take this idea and run with it and see where it goes. Started just selling it at farmers markets, honestly, locally around the Twin Cities and Minneapolis. And when I joined, I was mainly manufacturing it in a commercial kitchen and doing some design and photography and marketing. Where the company's at now is we're almost about to get into Target nationally. There's meetings that KC, the leader of the company, is having where, it's going very well in Minneapolis Targets, and hopefully we'll be in, national distribution in Target soon. So a lot has happened in those 6 years from farmers markets to Target. And there were a lot of times where it seemed like the company was gonna totally tank financially. A lot of deals with distributors that turned out to be terrible deals in the fine print, and we were losing money actually on every bottle that we sold through them because of all of these extra fees that they tacked on. So we figured that out, and then figured out what kind of distributors will actually make us some profit. And it's been about 1.5 years since that. And yeah, things are going very well now. We're in a much better place financially. But I don't think we would have been able to pull through that without the community support, which was basically because Casey doesn't need this job. Like, the only reason he started the company was hopefully to make a lot of money for the church. Like, he donates quite a bit of the profits of the company to the church and employs mainly church members in this company. we have hired people outside the church, but right now it's entirely church members that are employees at K Mama Sauce. So there wasn't really any pressure on him to, you have to do this or you're going to be homeless, or, you have to find a way to make this company work, or, you won't have a job. There's always something he can do at the church as a backup if it goes terribly wrong. And also, just the financial resources of the church, like the church members being united and really feeling like this isn't just KC's company, this is all of our company, and having that community buy-in. It's been a lifesaver. I don't know if there would still be a K Mama Sauce without the fact that it's a community business. Even in the early stages, the development, basically KC was able to taste test the sauce with all of the church members, like 150 members, to see which one is best. That's really hard for food companies starting out, is just figuring out what are people going to like, and those development of the recipes. So in multiple ways, K Mama Sauce is it's dependent on the fact that our community has supported it from the beginning. The company that I run right now is a artisan sourdough bakery called Uprising Bread Company, and it's very local. I only have about 30 customers that subscribe monthly, and I do bread deliveries around the metro area. And it started out in the church as well. I was just, I started baking. One of the church members gave me a sourdough starter because I said I was interested in it. And then I would bake for the students. We have a seminary at our church that Pastor Jin, the leader of our church, started. So I'd bake for the students, I'd bake for the people in our community houses. We have, I think, 8 different community houses in our community, just for free, just learning how to bake from scratch. And it got to the point where one of the deacons in our church said, "You should be selling this." So I started selling it to church members. Just like $5 a loaf. And then KC, actually, who I was working for at the time, said, "Isaac, you could make this into a business. Like, you could sell this at farmers markets really easily." There's a law in Minnesota, the cottage food law, where they make it very easy to make prepared foods that are basically very low risk of food safety hazards. So pickles, bread, things like that. So yeah, I started 2 years ago selling at farmers markets. And then when the pandemic hit, I shifted to the delivery subscription model because I wasn't very keen on being in person at farmers markets with that risk, especially living in community with roommates. If I was on my own, it'd be a bit of a different story, a lot easier to quarantine. But yeah, and so I use the church kitchen actually to bake that bread, and I use church vehicles to deliver it. And my first customers, I think my first 15 customers were all church members until I started selling outside of the church to farmers markets and the wider public. And at every step as I was developing the company, KC was there to offer advice about, how to get registered with the Department of State, how to set up a bank account, how to, do marketing and build your customer base. So it kind of compounded, actually, all of the work that our community put into helping KC figure out how to run a business, and all of the time we gave him to go to like online trainings on small business administration. Now he's a resource for the rest of our community, and he's helped not just Uprising Bread, but also now there's a botanicals company called Silver Lake Botanicals. We started a permaculture garden at our church 2 years ago, I think. And part of that is there's a medicine wheel where there's herbal medicinals growing I'm actually looking right out at it outside. And there was so much harvest that we couldn't have possibly used it all. And so 3 women in our church started harvesting, packaging, processing it into salves and tea blends and things like that, and started Silver Lake Botanicals. We're just up the hill from Silver Lake here in Columbia Heights, so that's where the name came from. And then, and it's very profitable, by the way. They already, this year, or I think all of the equipment and like overhead that they spent just getting the materials for packaging last year, they've already covered the costs, and they have hundreds more products available to sell. So any of those products that we sell now will just be 100% profit. All the costs are covered. So really great business model. And then the 4th business, like I mentioned, is Femretol, which is a used clothing company. And basically just taking donations from community members. And then there is I think she was originally an interior designer, but she's also really good at fashion design. So she basically pairs these items that we get and creates, looks that are then modeled on church members who volunteer. We put that all on Instagram, and then people are able to order a la carte the items that are being modeled, and then they're shipped all over the country. I'm sure they have customers in a lot of different places. So really the common core of all these businesses is everyone is really doing something that they're passionate about. KC running a Korean food company, he's one of the biggest foodies in our church, and now he's running this company where he gets to sell hot sauce. Initially at the farmers markets, it was fun just kind of seeing him be able to share that enthusiasm with crowds of like 20 or 30 people clamoring for samples of the sauce. I wouldn't say that I grew up passionate about baking. It's something that I learned how to do very recently, actually, but now I've been able to make that into a job. Hoping to be able to hire people in our church soon. The vision is eventually for it to be a co-op for church members if they want to learn how to bake and sell. But these other companies, the Silver Lake Botanicals and Femretol, are, it's all women on the staff, and it's totally cooperative. I don't think there's really like a boss in any of those companies. It's very self-directed work, and like a very non-anxious type of ethos, in the sense that they get as much work done as they can without burning out, and it's really key not to burn out. And the other thing is that these are all companies that we feel really are good, really good products. Like they're actually they're doing something good in the world, whether it is recycling clothes so that they don't just end up in the trash, or making healthy sauce, or making healthy bread that's really, good to eat, not just white bread, or like literal health products like the botanicals. These are all things that we feel good about putting out into the world, and the companies are all things that we feel good being a part of as well. It's a very non-competitive atmosphere, like I'm glad David brought up. We're an explicitly anti-capitalist church, and so we try to basically kind of weave our way through capitalism to make as much money as we can, so we can do better things with that money in our community. Things like buying houses, or things like paying off debt. We've had, I think, 6 or 7 people in our church pay off all of their debt in the past year, mainly through the finances we've been able to raise from some of these businesses. So I'll stop there. I think the biggest thing is the spirit of these companies is what we're putting out into the world, and also the culture that we're building within these companies for each other as an alternative to having jobs out in the wider society. So if anyone has questions or comments about those, I'm happy to share. But also, some of you brought up questions and situations that you may want to ask each other. I don't have a lot of experience with some of the situations that you're in, but I'm happy to share if something that I shared resonated with you, or if you have more questions about it.
Hannah, you mentioned you were starting a business, and I wondered what your business is that you were trying to get going.
Yes. So our business is called Spotlight Sprayers. It's been around for a long time. We purchased it from a friend's uncle who passed away. So in some ways, we're trying to figure out how he operated and why he made certain decisions. It's more like a remodel than a new build. And he has some old CRM and some old accountant, and we're trying to revamp things quickly. And it's tax season, so trying to get a lot of paperwork done right now. And there's one lady who's really good at the books, and so a lot of it falls on her shoulders, and then the rest of us kind of try to support her and kind of feel sorry for her right now, but it's just too much for one person maybe. But that's where we're at. And we also sell something called a Prima bathing system, which goes to any grooming shop, dogs, cats. They like to buy our system. It's easy on the workers' hands, and you don't have soap on your hands all day long. And it's just a spray nozzle with a tank. But I specifically, Isaac, I wanted to hear more about weaving your way through capitalism. We have used a similar phrase like creative financing or using the powers of this world for the kingdom. But do you have any more specific examples of how, I mean, you're definitely selling a product with a markup, but what is weaving the way through capitalism?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the language that Pastor Jin at our church actually uses is exploiting capitalism for village renewal. Village renewal being what Jesus was trying to do in Palestine within the Roman economy, right? And another phrase he uses a lot is Jesus taught his disciples to be as shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. You can't be as innocent as doves if you're not also being as shrewd as serpents, because you'll just end up, beaten up, exploited, worn out, burnt out. So what that looks like in our community is, I mean, that story of like K Mama Sauce and the bad deal we had with this distributor, that was awful. And, we needed to learn to be much more shrewd about those dealings because it almost destroyed the company financially. So that was a really hard lesson to learn of just, basically not trusting, basically trust everyone in the community because we are like family with each other, but not trusting people outside of that community because sure, some of them want to help you, but really capitalism is based on the principle of the big fish eating the little fish. I don't know how many of you are seeing what's happening with like GameStop and Robinhood right now. It's insane, but the rules of the game are that the big fish can change the rules of the game when they're losing. That's actually how this thing works. That's 100% capitalism. And what that means is we don't necessarily need to have like qualms about like, you know, like, are we like, by no means should we exploit one another or you know, like let the spirit of capitalism infect us from the inside and, you know, change our character into like cutthroat competition to the degree that we're now treating each other that way. God forbid. That's like, you know, that would be awful. But we don't need to extend the same level of grace and trust and confidence and all of that to it's not even just competitors, but creditors in this case. Like, this was a company, a distributor that we thought wanted K Mama Sauce to thrive, because if we thrive, then maybe they make more money. That's not the way they saw it at all. They have enough of a base of suppliers that they work with that if one of them drowns, it's not a big deal. They have hundreds more that they will, you know, further leech off of. And when we realized that, like, it kind of dawned on all of us sitting in the staff meeting, like, oh, we need to be really sharp when we're dealing with companies outside of our church community. So yeah, we're very careful now and very keen on like double checking what kind of contracts we get into. So yeah, that's one example. Another example I think would be like I do the bakery. Uprising Bread has a really big profit margin actually. Flour is super cheap, water is even cheaper, and those are my main ingredients. I use a little bit of salt as well, but literally sourdough bread is just flour, water, and salt, and the sourdough starter, which is a mixture of flour and water. So it's very, very cheap to make. And if you look at the price that I'm charging customers, it's, you know, grossly inflated, right? But the way that works for me is the thing that I'm doing with that money is paying off debt and getting out of debt so that I can use the money for the work of the church. And now I just got out of debt 100% in October this past year. So now all of the money that's coming in through the bakery, it's at the disposal of the church community, whether we're trying to buy a new house or paying off other people's debt if they still have, you know, college loans or medical loans. So in a way, because I'm operating in like a it's kind of a capitalist model, right? Like I am making profit off of work that I'm doing. And if I were living 100% in like a village economy where everyone that I'm doing business with is family or extended family or neighbors, I probably wouldn't be charging as much money as I am because, you know, my needs would be taken care of. And I really don't have any interest in like making money off of my neighbors and my friends and family. But as long as we're in this kind of system where, you know, not only is money able to do like other things that the community wants to do, but money is also a burden for people who are in debt or, you know, who aren't making enough money to pay bills or, you know, have like food insecurity. Then that's kind of that shrewd as a serpent feel. Like, how much money can I make out there in the world to bring back so that we can do what we need to do with that money? And there's no problem with that. There's no obligation that I have to you know, customers or you know, people who know about my company outside of my community to, you know, like, I feel bad about capitalism and I don't actually believe in profit, so maybe I'll charge them as little as possible. No, actually, on the contrary, what is the most money I can make so that I can help pay off my roommate's debt, or so that we can buy a new house to offer affordable housing in our community? So there's kind of these two levels of consciousness that we operate in the businesses.
Just if I might, Isaac, thank you very much. That really answers that question well. But I think that's kind of the core of this conversation, is that how to exploit that capitalism. And one of the aspects which I've been involved in is the level of outsourcing, and if there are specific aspects of our business which we can no longer manage as a community, are we willing to pay a living wage to other people to do that work, to take away those capitalistic pressures? And that's a very difficult decision, because it happens to, impact the bottom line and how much profit we'll be able to make. But in many times in our Bruderhof history, we've had to make that difficult call, where we're not going to be as profitable, but we're going to keep the business going, and we're going to find other people who can earn a living wage to do those things which we cannot physically manage ourselves. And I think that's where, like you said, not getting into a frenzy of working ridiculous hours, or even just, our ability to be honest with our customer base, to be very clear on what we can or can't manage to fulfill as orders, but then as well, to be completely honest, we had some awful phone calls this season with the pandemic, influencing some of our deliveries, and the customers were very upset, that their Christmas presents didn't get there on time, and even though we shipped them in the 10th of December, we weren't going to send out automatically free replacements to all these customers, but we had to be honest, with it when it was our fault. We had to take full responsibility, and we often did. I mean, we always did. But in the case of the U.S. Postal Service, which, as most people know, was in shambles this holiday season, we couldn't guarantee anything more than they were able to deliver on. So again, you take your chances, but at the end of the day, here at Koinonia, our sales were double what last Christmas sales were, and with fewer volunteers, fewer people. But at the end of each day, there was only so much we were able to do. And there was incredible, camaraderie, incredible working together, because we're all committed to those values. Sure, we did some overtime, but at the end of the day, whether we got this delivered, the first day it came out, or the second or the third, our priority was relationships within the community, and that always came first. So I guess that's the hard juggling act in some ways. But that always has to be a priority, no matter what business it is that, that those relationships, that nobody goes under, that nobody feels like the full weight is on their shoulders. And even if it means, somebody else has to be hired to do the job, and we risk, not turning a profit for another 6 months or another year, that may be the difficult decision that has to be made in some of those cases.
Thank you so much. I also want to note that we have a fear that the business decisions might break us as a community, because we're a new community, and that just the stress will just make us all decide not to do anything anymore. But we do know that Jesus is more important and community is more important. So if the business needs to fall, that's okay. And we're going to hold it that way. And yeah, if the house remodel needs to be sold, whatever. The community is more important than these work things we've decided to do together.
So I have a question / observation. Isaac, you've mentioned how these businesses are community businesses, but then you've also mentioned how they're owned by individuals, and that's how we're at Genesis Community. Individuals own the houses, and then we rent. Those individuals rent to Genesis, and then Genesis rents to everybody in the community. So we actually, my wife and I, pay rent in our own house that we own, and that way it kind of equals the playing field, so to speak, and it's not like we're the landlords and listen to us because we have the power. So it's hard for nonprofits to get loans. I've been to banks and they just don't want to give out loans to nonprofits. And they say that in the eyes of the public, if you ever have to foreclose on a church or a nonprofit, that's just bad news. Like, no, then they're the bad guys. So because they don't want to create a situation where they're the bad guys, they just don't loan to churches unless they've got 50% down. Or there's a huge, fundraising and they get a ludicrous amount of money. And so if you're a bigger community or, you have a ludicrous amount of money, there's an option for the community to actually own the businesses. But it seems like for us, and even this Airbnb that we're looking at, it's, me buying another house and then figuring out how to make that work in as a community business. So just want to hear about stories on is that a good model? Does that work? How does it not work? Are there success stories with not the nonprofits actually owning the property and not needing to give their eye teeth in order to make it happen? Just curious about that.
Yeah, at CAN, I can speak to that a little bit. So we have these 8 community houses and the church owns none of them. They're all owned individually. And all of our businesses as well, I think are LLCs, with the exception of Underground Seminary, which is part of a nonprofit that we founded, Underground Ministries. And you're right. I think basically it's interesting noticing how tilted in favor of LLCs and sole proprietorships, everything is. It's so easy to, run things if you're kind of doing the American dream, capitalist model, because, that's what bankers trust. It's kind of what it seems like. And it's easier for them to know how to handle that. So, and similar to, I really like the idea that you mentioned of the multiple levels of renting almost. What we do at CAN is basically very few people live in the house that they own. So they own a house in the community, but 7 other people live there. And then they live in a house that someone else owns. So there's not that kind of landlord renter feeling in one house. And if they, if someone needs plumbing fixed, maybe they'll go work on it at the house next door. But anyways, yeah, I don't know if others have more to share to that degree, but yeah, entirely all of our businesses and all of our community houses are owned privately, not owned by the church. But they're operated in trust of the church, basically, which would not work if any of the owners of these, properties or businesses was secretly trying to, get rich quick, using the church as a springboard. So we have a lot of trust in our community that keeps all of that working really well.
I've wondered the same thing. Is how do some communities get the funds together to start so many businesses? There's one in Portland called Edsidio, and they run several businesses. And I admire it, but you got to have the visionary and the money, and different pieces have to come together. We bought our business privately, so if that helps you.
I'd just like to say that with Community Playthings, one of our first businesses, it was 12 years before the business actually turned a profit and came out of the red. So I think it's just a matter of long, lean years and holding on to the vision that brings you together in community to begin with. It's part and parcel with your foundation of why you want to live more intently together. And like you said, Hannah, prayer. Jesus is our foundation. And once we've resolved that we're not going to worry, that we won't look beyond today and turn to him for our strength, I think if that worry element can be taken out, because we're confident as to that foundation and why we are together, then to a great extent, he'll take care of a lot. But I think a lot of hard work and using the different gifts of the community and finding buy-in from your customers. They realize that you have a unique product to offer that that could make the difference. But it's no easy thing to build a business, and but keep plugging.
Mark, I think it was a little longer than 8 years, because I can remember as a child the banker coming up into Woodcrest and yelling, "I want my money," and the steward would be running out the back of the door into the woods, and we'd just say, "Well, he's not here right now." And we kind of had this thing going when the guy came to collect the money, that we'd tip off Alan Stevenson, and he'd run out the back door and say, "Well, he's not here right now." But another thing, in another story from early days of Community Playthings, was a vendor we contracted to make some parts for in 1962. And he always tells the story how the bill was $61 and change. And at the end of the month, our sister, who was doing the accounts, called him up and said, "Bernie, we can't pay it this month. Would you be willing to extend another month's credit?" And because she was faithful in asking, he extended it for 9 months. And then one day she said, "Bernie, we're going to pay your bill this month." And now that company has been one of our main vendors for decades, and it's gone into the third generation of the family. So faithfulness in little things is also important, and being honest is important. And then you can build trust even if you can't pay the bills. And I know the world has gotten a lot more cutthroat than it was back then, but people are still people. Andrea, what are your thoughts? I was very intrigued by what you were saying.
I'm just hoping for people to supply me with thoughts. You know, as we think about it here, we think about starting something obviously that's very small. We have guests for up to a year with varying degrees of physical ability, let alone skills in any sort of realm. So we think about like sourdough bread that doesn't cost a lot. Thinking about small sewing projects where we know so many old ladies that would give us houses full of fabric. And we already have machines that we can use. So we have ideas, but nothing has had that spark of, oh yes, this is the thing we should go after, that is easy to administrate, be the boss of, and is easy to teach people who don't have many hard skills. Anyway, so again, I don't have many thoughts, mostly just questions of how our little outpost can enter into something that is life-giving for all of us, for those who are expending more energy to support other people, and can be life-giving for those people to be like, oh, I am learning how to like work, which would often be a learning curve for a lot of the people that we have here.
I just had one bit of information that I don't know, it might be helpful. I know some of the entrepreneurial juices got running by some of my generation who had never, had to start a business during COVID when our business started to tank. And one of the young fathers who was trying to find a way to finance his children's music lessons, in an era where you were trying to, hold back on purchases, which, some might deem, extravagant or just, not necessarily, meat and potatoes anymore. But he started selling stuff on Etsy. Him and his brother started, just a very, very small scale business. And it did so well that they ended up, floating it to one of our small communities to take on. It was customizable sound absorption panels, which doesn't seem very glorious. But this one particular dad was super sensitive to noise, and he had installed these in his home. And so he took something, again, that he was passionate about and, sold it on a very small scale, very little overhead, and only, posted what he actually had made. And so there wasn't that huge, commitment of resources. And I had to think about it, how many artists are there out there on the streets that are homeless because they've never had somebody to advocate, for their skill set. And in our, community playthings line, a lot of the work is very simplistic, or it's at least been simplified to the level that anyone who's visited our communities, you can be put to work and be shown the work in less than 5-10 minutes. Koinonia is similar in certain places. There's within the bakery, if you're bagging up chocolate, it doesn't take a large training. In fact, this last year, everybody had to work everywhere. So everybody got to do stuff. And sometimes, the stuff got weighed wrong, or, things didn't work out so well, but there was always a place for somebody who was willing to work. And I think that should be the goal in any business is there one place, even if it's just, applying a piece of tape to a box when you're packing up somebody else's, artwork, and they only do maybe 2 or 3 boxes a day and have to, hand address the boxes, or whatever it is. I think, there are opportunities for some of those things where people can flourish. Because I've been surprised at, what they're able to find folks here to do. Because people will come and show up, and they get on a typical non-COVID year, they get 900 to 1,000 overnight guests at the farm, and they're expected to be put to work. Sometimes it's just picking up sticks in the pecan orchard. I shouldn't say just, because that's a critical part of the pecan harvest. But other times, there's always something. Even if it's maintaining the beds of the hospitality houses, or a very specific, washing the community clothes where it's their job and they're gonna do this one, even if it takes them all day to wash 2 loads of laundry. I don't know. Sometimes those kinds of things, which will then free up resources for the other people who have maybe a different skill set that during busy season didn't have time to wash their clothes. I mean, it seems crazy, but that's kind of what we came to here, because there were certain folks where, they were on the telephone with customers, 8, 9, 10 hours a day during our busy time. And you couldn't just put anyone in that slot. So in order to find that sweet spot for people, knowing that it's going to be wildly different depending on who you happen to have there. I don't know, just a few thoughts from a few random sets of experiences.
I had a random thought I wanted to share. So I mentioned earlier that Isaac mentioned the shrewd and innocent as doves, shrewd as serpents, innocent as doves, and also how nonprofits, people don't loan to nonprofits. Well, if you were in that situation and you had an LLC, you can have an LLC owned by a nonprofit, and then that LLC would have a much better chance of getting a loan So that's a situation where you could have a business owned by the church that would potentially have a better shot at getting a loan.
We are at 4 o'clock, so if any of you need to get going, feel free. I don't mind staying on a bit longer if people want to keep on talking, but yeah, I know we, like Roberto and Nathan, I don't know if we got to any of your questions yet. Feel free to lift those up again, or if anything sparked. Good to see you, Mark. Yeah, Mark.
So that's our benediction, right? That's our benediction. The service is over.
Just as the facilitator of the conversation, I'm saying we have reached the appointed time, but I you know, I'm not in a rush. If I don't want to cut the conversation short, if there are things that people still want to ask or talk about.
Yes, yes.
But feel free to take your leave, as Mark just did, if you need to.
I have notes of this discussion, so if people are interested, put your email in the chat and I'll send them to you.
Great, thank you, David.
So the recording of this discussion, will it be on the Nurturing Communities website?
I'm not sure. Tim or Andrew, do you know about that? Joe asked me to record, so I'm
okay. Well,
recording. Yeah,
I'll put my email, and if you figure out where to send the recording, I'd like it.
Okay,
that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
It's been great to see everybody again. I mean, I haven't met Hannah before, but everybody else, we've been on calls at other times. Don't know if I've met you, Isaac, but all the others are familiar faces. So that's just a lot of fun to me to see other brothers and sisters around the country and the world, I should say, because Roberto is in Mexico and Nathan's in Mexico. So, and Andre, it's awesome to see you again. That summer you spent with us was just the best.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys too. We're really hoping for another sabbatical. We were thinking this summer, but I don't think it will be. But we are looking forward to a visit to some Bruderhof as part of a sabbatical in the next couple of years, God willing.
That's great.
I guess one question I had, Isaac, you definitely highlighted it, and I've thought about it a lot in the, if you're just starting a business, the actual products and the place they have, and are they something that you're proud of, something that you can stand behind, and I think that's often something I've thought about, and I initially had a hard time when we started making expensive carved signs, which was kind of just different than providing quality furniture for kids or for rehabilitative equipment, because you're just, you've got a $10,000 sign for some, giant sports complex. Is that something that we want to stand behind? And again, I had to think a lot about it. And like you said, it's part of that delicate dance, are we going to use that to further God's kingdom? Are we going to use those resources? And I know, kind of in the same breath, I kind of laughed initially when David told me, Hannah, about the particular business that and he almost told me it sort of half apologetically. He's like, it was a gift from God. And I love that, because it's a way, okay, you can use that. It's not actively killing anybody, it's but at the same time, I had to kind of think, I was like, so what, would there be anything that I wouldn't want to do? And I had to, I don't know.
Right.
It was just a good exercise for me, because I've never had to start a business, and I'm anticipating, the trajectory my life's headed very likely could be in a small community with 2 or 3 families and a bunch of singles, and we'll have to come up with something. I know if it was up to me, what I would do, I'm a former barista, and I would make coffee and read and sell books. But that's me, I did that straight out of high school, and I loved it. I loved the conversation of it, and the ability to, take used books or good quality new books and have, further discussions once we can do these things in person again. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other people who would want to weigh in on that as a community, if there's anything that, we'd have a hard time entering in on, or what kind of threshold we'd set for ourselves as Christians.
I can speak to this. When I was an intern at World Hunger Relief in Waco, I worked at Starbucks, and we talked a lot about Walmart and how it was a problem. But I think we decided that sometimes you just have to enter the belly of the beast and work from within. And I saw little things like that. Like, I asked my Starbucks manager if we could start recycling, and we were in Texas, and they were we'll look into that, because I come from Oregon where everybody recycles. But I think that sometimes, like right now, I am a horticulturist and I don't spray. I am more of an organic farmer, but I feel like I might be able to train some of these old website and resources, things we say. I don't know yet. That and see what happens.
Looks like we lost Hannah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, well, Isaac, I sent you the notes and I sent them to Hannah and Andrea. Oh, there's Hannah. She came back.
Hannah's back.
Back from the cyber dead. That's great.
Very cool.
And the notes are just as raw. And if people want them, get them from Isaac, and I sent them to you, Hannah and Andrea. So
great. You emailed them to me, David?
I did. I just replied to your invitation, and
Great.
And then I included Hannah and Andrea.
Great. Yeah, I'll forward those out to the rest of the people on the list.
Yeah. So that's just a little habit I have of typing as I listen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So I'm going to go, and it was good to see everybody, and thanks for all the sharing. Andrea, I'll tell Teresa hi from you.
Yes.
All right.
You all. Thanks for joining today.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you,
Gracias.
Tim.
Everybody, peace.
Okay.